So, welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers learn from other marketers across different industries and to help provide perspective for agencies about things marketers deal with every day to help them better represent their clients and win new business. Today, we're talking with Kasey Moss, the brand director for Chomps, based out of Naples, Florida, and Chicago, Illinois. Kasey, thanks for much. Thanks so much for joining us today. How have you been?
Of course. Wonderful. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. It's Friday, so that's always a good thing. So,
Yes.
well, I've got a small handful of questions for you today, but before I jump into those, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about Chomps and your role in the organization, so our listeners know what kind of company it is and what you do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chomps is we like to say best for you, or not better for you, meat snack company. So we essentially create a very clean, lean, high protein meat snack. Currently, we're in stick format. And I am the brand director, so I oversee all things on the organic side from creative, content, social media, PR, experiential, kind of all falls under my direction.
Okay, that's great. How long have you been with the organization?
About a little over 2 years. So I
Okay.
joined right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay, nice. Fun times, huh? Um, yeah, so
Yes, very
uh,
interesting for sure.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm curious. I noticed that in addition to your time spent at Chomps, you spent 9 years prior to this working for Enjoy Life Foods, also sort of a good for you, food manufacturer and marketer. Just curious, why your focus on the good for you industry? Is it something that you kind of walk into your career thinking that that's what you wanted to do, or did you just, have you found that you kind of really enjoy that space?
Yeah, for me, the food industry was actually a passion that was developed through my career. It wasn't something
Okay.
I necessarily wanted to get into. So, my aunt, who actually is one of my biggest mentors, she was always in the creative realm, more on the TV side. So, after
Oh,
shadowing her, I really knew that kind of marketing in the creative space was where I wanted to go.
that's awesome.
Originally wanted to get into sports marketing. I'm a huge Chicago sports fan, so the dream was always to work for like the Cubs or the Blackhawks or something like
Nice.
that. And right out of college, I worked for an agency that represented a lot of food brands, and I was
Hmm,
like, it was really the start of the natural food space becoming what it is today.
sure.
I won't say how many years ago, but very early in the start of my
Yeah.
career. And I just felt like there was a huge opportunity to kind of help grow brands in the space. So it was a passion developed over time and experience for
That's
sure.
great. Very cool. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love the focus. The fact that you identified it and just have really sort of stayed focused on it. That's great. I'm curious. How do you think marketing products like Chomps differs from marketing, say, a more mainstream food product, other than probably having smaller marketing budgets? Are there other things you need to be considerate of, other ways you need to think about how you message or market your brand?
Yeah, I think the double-edged sword of working in like for a smaller brand is that we have direct exposure and conversations with the consumer on a very personal level. We're
Okay.
small teams. It's my team you're talking to on Instagram and Facebook, and we work directly with customer service and things like that.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's a lot of people looking at you to see kind of how the brand might react to a certain situation, or how they are use what they're using in messaging rather. So I think you have that more direct interaction, and you're able to be a little bit more community focused with your
Okay.
consumers, which is super important, especially for a product like ours where we're marketing to more niche groups like Whole30 or keto, paleo. We're able to kind of be experts not only in our product but in the markets that we're directly impacting.
Okay. So is it fair to say that brands like Chomps sort of establish more intimate relationships with their consumers versus more of a mainstream food brand?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, while actually during my time at Enjoy Life, we were actually acquired by a larger food company.
Okay.
So I got to see kind of the differences in how the products are actually marketed as well. So, yeah, absolutely. Direct impact, direct conversations with the consumer. And we can get feedback really quick too and interact
Sure.
really quick and pivot, which is exciting for us.
That's great. Yeah. We work with a number of marketing agencies on the other side of my business that talk about helping brands find their quote unquote purpose. And in some cases, I've heard it called like the brand truth. I would imagine that there
Hmm.
are a good number of good for you brands that use philanthropy or other approaches to sort of best define their purpose for consumers, employees. Has Chomps done any of this? And if so, how has that benefited the brand and the company?
Yeah, for sure. It's for us, it's really about how we manufacture our products
Okay.
and how we're sourcing our ingredients and how we're
Okay.
treating the environment along the way. So that's really a huge focus for us. So we kind of have these three pillars that we really are focused on, and it's exactly that: environment, animal welfare, and nutrition. So making
Okay.
sure not only the proteins and the animals we're using in our products are treated really well, but the farms that we source from are really looking to make the world a better place at the same time. So
Okay.
it's interesting. Our beef farmers actually look at themselves as grass farmers. So they really focus on like regenerative agriculture and making sure
Hmm.
that the grass is regrown in the way that they're raising the beef. And so we're really focused on just, being sustainable, being climate positive, and just making the environment is a huge factor in kind of our manufacturing too. And
Got it.
then obviously end product, we want the cleanest, most nutritious product possible for our consumer.
Got it. Do you have, with a lot of brands out there and in sort of this good for you space, is it challenging to effectively get that message across to your consumer and differentiate yourself, or not really?
Um, they're we're really the only one of the only brands in our space that's focused on that type of messaging too.
Got it.
It is hard to sort from a sourcing perspective, make sure that we're continuing to source from these farmers that the product availability and ingredient availability, it
Right.
has been challenging for us along
Sure.
the way. I think a certain segment of our consumers care. Not all of our consumers care about that aspect of the business, but it's a
Right.
huge part of who we are
Right.
as a business. So it's definitely something that we talk about often.
Okay.
And it's definitely important, but there's a lot of other things that make us a great, product for consumers as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like Chomps has been pretty successful building a solid base of distribution across some major retailers. Are there things that you have to do to get retailers to take notice of, what your company has to offer? I mean, is it tough being a smaller brand to keep them happy? And what kind of things can you do to sort of keep them on your good side?
Yeah, for sure. So, and having kind of past experience with other brands, so Enjoy Life was definitely a more retail focused brand. I think
Okay.
the really cool thing about Chomps is we were direct to consumer first.
Okay.
So we built this brand, and Pete and Rashid, our co-founders, built this brand on had already are coming to retailers with these loyal consumers. So they're
Got
already
it.
purchasing on Amazon, on Thrive from our website. So that was really how the brand was launched. So we have the demand. We're coming with consumers ready to purchase.
Hmm.
We also have an awesome team and are able to use data to our advantage. So
Hmm.
looking at how many of our current consumers we would bring to certain retailers and certain accounts. And
Okay.
I think along the way is, a learning I've seen is brands want to be in every retailer and be there forever, wherever their consumer is shopping. And that's not always the best way to look at it, because not every retailer is going to be a true partner to you. So I think the cool thing too is our sales team is really focused on making sure we're working with accounts that align with our brand and are really partners, not
Okay.
necessarily us kind of always working for them in a way.
Got it.
But I think because we come with this demand, we're in a very lucky situation that our product doesn't stay on shelf very long. So
That's
it's
great.
exciting.
Yeah, that's great. That's a
Yeah.
definitely a good position to be in, for sure. Yeah,
Yes.
I noticed you work with a production firm to produce content, and curious, are you fairly active in the social space? And then separately, any advice you'd give to marketers looking to build a presence and better take advantage of the social space?
Yeah, we actually work with quite a few creative partners.
Okay.
We're very active on social, so we're focused on all platforms. TikTok is the newest to us, but
Hmm.
we're very active across TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and no matter the focus, we're there,
Yep.
sharing our message and engaging with consumers. Um, I think content can come from anywhere. So we not only produce internally, we use creative partners such as photographers, videographers. It's important to know like what performs well on
Hmm.
specific platforms. So TikTok, for example, we do all of that in house because organic, front camera facing content performs really well, while more produced content performs better on Instagram and Facebook. So it's just kind of finding what performs well where.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, we have a pretty extensive influencer program. So we really leverage our influencers to help us create content as well.
Oh, nice. Okay. So if I'm a person who just invented some interesting food brand like Chomps, and I want to sort of build up a social media presence, what would you suggest to me? Like where would I want to start?
Send free product. Identify influencers in your space that you feel align with your brand.
Okay.
Gift them product, send them free product. Um, Start a relationship. Influencer
Okay.
space has definitely grown. So while traditionally you used to be able to just send product and they'd post about it, now
Sure.
the majority charge to actually create mini ads and content.
Hmm.
That would be where I would start as a new brand,
Yeah.
is build these relationships with influencers, build
Got it.
that rapport, send them free product, gift them product, and pay them. They spend a lot of time creating content, so
Yeah.
invest dollars in having them actually create content. It's the easiest and most inexpensive way for you to start as a new
To
brand,
right, to
and
establish.
then loop in external partners and more
Right.
production and high quality.
Yeah.
I think you can be really down and dirty when you're first starting, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Cool. That's great advice. Uh, Kind of along the same lines, I'm just curious, what do you see as you've been in the business, in this sort of good for you space for, a decade plus. What are some of the positive changes you've seen in the industry as a whole, and where do you see it going in the next 3 5 years?
I think the really cool thing about the natural food space is while there's competition between
Hmm.
brands in your category, there's so much camaraderie. There's so much kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been to like Natural Products Expo West, which is the largest
I
natural
I
food trade show.
Yeah, I know it, but I've never been there.
Have you
Yeah.
been? Okay, yeah, and it's just really like the energy and being on the show floor and talking to brands in the space. We have a lot of brand relationships, brand friends, brand crushes that we keep in touch with and we network with. Um, which I don't think you see a lot in traditional. Like you probably wouldn't see a large CPG company, talking to another large, and sharing trade secrets, where we're kind
Sure.
of more open books. Like, this worked really well for us. You should try it in the beverage space, for example. So I think that's something unique about our industry. Entrepreneurship, been there, done that. A lot of people are able to share kind of their learnings along the way. So maybe save future entrepreneurs a little bit of time
Mhm.
learning the hard way too. So I just think that's something that's really unique to the natural food space and really cool to see.
As you look forward over the next 3 to 5 years, like, what do you see happening in the natural space? Do you see any big changes, or do you just see it, continuing to evolve the way it's been evolving? If you had to make some predictions, what do you think it's gonna look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of acquisitions, a lot
Okay.
of merging. Larger companies seeing brands doing things that they maybe haven't figured out how to do. So I think in the near term, that's probably what will happen. I also think it's so cool. There's this, especially with COVID, it's given people an opportunity to reset and figure out, like, am I doing what I want to be doing, and creating
Mhm.
this whole new wave of entrepreneurs and new products and new brands. So I think we're going to also continue to see kind of an explosion of people starting their own product lines as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think that that's going to stop. I think from a trends perspective, we're going to continue to see things kind of ebb and flow, plant based, which is obviously not something that we focus on at Chomps.
Mhm.
I think we'll kind of maybe peak and plateau. So there's some trends along the way. I think we'll continue to kind of ebb and
Yeah.
flow as well.
Yeah, interesting. What do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges for the Chomps brand as you look forward?
I think continuing growth,
Okay.
as I mentioned, our demand, and something we're focused on always from a brand perspective, is continuing to keep the demand far outpacing our distribution. And so
Mhm.
making sure consumers can get the product and being available where they're shopping. And then continuing to expand. I think, we're in just one category now, and in the snack space, what else can we do that's
Okay.
comparable and on brand to continue to innovate?
Okay.
Innovation is a huge focus for us, not only from like a flavor extension perspective, but also new categories. Looking into kind of continuing to build the brand.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Is that drive to look to new categories sort of uh, more of an internal mechanism for growth, or do retailers expect sort of that kind of activity out of a brand like Chomps, or is that consumers looking for more? What sort of drives that move to find new product categories?
I think it's a combination of everything you just mentioned. So we
Okay.
definitely work with a lot of our retail partners, potentially to do things like exclusive flavors. We have certain SKUs and pack sizes that are only in certain accounts. For
Sure.
example, Whole Foods has what we call our pantry pack, which is like 8 sticks in a resealable pouch.
Okay.
Um, there's only certain places you can get that. So innovating from a pack size perspective, and then outside of categories really brand driven. I think, taking the same foundation that we built Chomps and what Pete and Rashid did to build the Chomps brand, and how do we replicate that into other snacking categories and
Yeah.
really reinvigorate this category with kind of continued childhood favorites, thinking of like the current category we're in, and but continuing to maintain the fact that we're keto, paleo, whole 30, and continuing to keep our brand promise
Got it.
true
Yeah.
across categories as well.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you're so specific in what you do and what you stand for. Making certain that the equities of the brand remain consistent as you expand into other categories. I would imagine would be really important to you and to the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yep.
to our consumers.
Right, and to the consumers as well. The all important consumer, we can't forget
Yeah.
about them.
Yeah.
So, right, right
Yes.
on there. So, so yeah, beyond the work that you do with some of the production companies, any other marketing agencies that you work with? And if so, what are you using other marketing agencies to help you do?
Yeah, I think something that's really important for brands too is know what your strengths are internally and what's
Okay.
realistic from a bandwidth perspective, and then identifying those gaps. So for us, two huge areas on the brand side is PR. So we use an external PR agency. We
Okay.
just know we can't manage that internally, and it just made more sense for us to outsource that. In addition, I mentioned influencer as
That's
well.
right.
We have a significant chunk of our marketing budget is allocated towards influencers. So we actually do outsource the majority of our influencer management work as well.
Okay.
So those are kind of the two key agencies that we're using on my team. And then across marketing and ecom at Chomps, we also tap into other areas like SEO, some then anything project specific. So
Mhm.
we're going through a few internal projects that we're using some agencies for on more of a project base
Okay.
versus a retainer base. So, but the big ones are definitely PR and influencer today.
Okay. Got it. And what do you see as sort of the advantages of bringing an agency on board versus trying to manage some of it internally?
I think for me, I know my strengths are really in, I have an eye for creative, but I'm
Hmm.
not a designer. So
Yep.
I
Okay.
know, I think you need to identify what you're good at and what you're not. So I think from, a strategic perspective, I think I obviously provide value on the brand strategy and then
Hmm.
using an
Yep.
agency partner to help me execute against that piece of it.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, really identifying what you're good at, what you're not. And then also do the same for hiring. So, when we're building out the brand team, we're really thinking what's going to be most valuable to us to have like a full-time employee doing that versus an
Got it.
agency.
Okay.
And where are we going to get the most kind of dialogue? And, a lot of ours is direct to consumer business. So
Yep.
we do a lot online and have that direct engagement with consumers. So just really identifying gaps. It also allows us to work faster and do a lot at once. So
By
we're
bringing
focused.
by bringing an agency in, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or okay, got it.
absolutely. So, I'm just thinking about the agencies that I work with
Hmm.
directly, and, we have probably 15 projects at a given time running across all agencies. And while we're having these outsourced groups do all of this, while we're still able to push forward on some of our internal initiatives and get
Hmm.
that external help, it's really just, especially for a smaller business, kind of that all hands on deck approach. So it's really helpful from a bandwidth perspective.
That's great. That's great. And if I were a marketer thinking about bringing an agency on board for the first time, any advice you'd give me as a marketer?
Do I have learned the hard way along the road. Do your due diligence up front.
Okay.
Um, I always encourage if you're really sold on, you always have to think the people that are trying to sell you their business are not your day-to-day contacts. Ask to meet the team that's going to be on your account.
Okay.
That has been really helpful for me because it's you might fall in love with the person that's pitching you their agency, but then maybe you don't necessarily mesh well with the group that's doing the work for you. So I
Right.
always try to meet a few folks that would be on our business. I think that's really important. And then just making sure that for us, identifying agencies that will represent you well externally. So I know I mentioned influencer
Hmm.
and PR. They are your team to industry, trade, to the actual influencers we're working with. Make sure that they're representing you properly and you're training them up front on your
Right.
brand, and they can speak to Chomps, for example, just as well as you can. Because the worst thing would be for me if an influencer came to me and was like, so and so from this agency said this, and I just don't
Hmm.
agree with that. And it's like,
Right.
they're representing me, and I have
Yeah.
to be confident in them. So, um, I think that's a really thing I've learned the hard way through my career that I would definitely give advice on.
Got it. So if I mean, obviously, I won't know how the agency is going to represent my brand until they actually start working for me. If I'm looking at agencies, any advice you give to try and get some sort of indication as to how effective that agency is at doing what you just described?
Yeah, check your references. I'm a big
Okay.
reference checker. I love
Okay.
to network, look at work that they've done, depending
Okay.
on what you're hiring the agency for, whether it's a creative project or, um, and then making sure, for example, we're actually going through a big project right now where I found I found we're looking at a new website design, and I found sites that I really like in the industry, and I found out
Hmm.
who made those sites
Oh,
and then
interesting. Okay.
vetted those agency partners,
Oh, nice.
and then talked to the brand representative from those companies who managed the project to make sure it was a seamless experience. And that was all part of kind of our due diligence
Nice.
in identifying those partners. So I think just making sure you spend the time doing the work up front, the project will run much smoother.
Yeah. So you identified the agency that did the site and then talked to the brand person from that particular company to get some insight from them.
Exactly.
That's great. I love it.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
So my last question is, if I'm an agency and I'm trying to knock down your door to win business from you, what advice would you give me?
I've gone through some bad pitches and some really good pitches through the
Okay.
years. I think make sure make sure you're using the right assets, number one, and any kind of materials you're sending, as far as like
Okay.
proper logos, proper product photography.
Yeah.
I've gone through some rough ones where I'm like, I don't even know where they found these images. I think I think identifying, and see how they talk, see how the company is representing themselves on social and
Hmm.
LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
and
Good
make sure
point.
you're speaking the same language. And then, also obviously do some due diligence around the industry they're in. So for us, meat snacks is not everyone's forte. So learn a little bit about the category, look at our competitors. I
Yeah.
think for us, because we're in stick format, we're not necessarily competing against jerky. So if you're coming and saying that, a jerky company is a direct competitor, we might not see it that way. So make sure you're
Sure.
really spending time to kind of learn about the category too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you get a lot of agencies reaching out to you?
We do,
Do you?
yes.
Has there been, as
Yeah.
you think back, is there a standout agency that like did an unbelievable job convincing you that it was worth your time to talk to them? And if so, what did they do?
There's
Or
been
not,
a
or
few.
not?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. I won't name names, but
Yeah.
I worked with when I was with Enjoy Life. We actually
Hmm.
ended up going with a true creative agency of record, and they
Hmm.
were just incredible to work with. And then I've have good relationships with a lot of agencies from my time here at Chomps too. Both agencies we're currently working with and agencies that we just continue to stay in touch with.
Hmm.
I think if you can ever find like a personal connection too with somebody at a brand, for example, the videographer group we work with was actually someone that went to college with me,
Oh,
but we didn't
nice.
know each other in college. And so he kind of made it more personal in that way. He's
When he
like,
made
hey,
the
it looks like we
connection.
both went to Bradley. And
Yeah. Nice.
so I think it's relationship building. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, cool. Well, listen, I really appreciate the time today, Kasey. I thought it was a great conversation. You're working on a very interesting business that, seems to be doing really well and has some great potential. And so it'll be exciting to see where Chomps goes next, and where the industry goes too, because it is a dynamic industry, and there's just so much newness and so much changing, and it's a pretty cool space to be playing in. So wish you all the best moving forward, and thanks again for your time today.
Thanks so much. It was great chatting.
Yeah, thank you.